You ever notice how most people don't actually wake up anymore? Their eyes open, but their mind is already owned. Owned by notifications. Owned by unfinished conversations. Owned by yesterday's mistakes. Owned by a world that profits from keeping them mentally exhausted before 8 a.m. And the worst part? Most people call this normal. A Roman emperor saw this problem 2,000 years ago. A man surrounded by war, betrayal, politics, manipulation, and noise, yet somehow he kept his mind untouched while the world around him collapsed. Today, the world isn't attacking you with swords. It attacks you with urgency. Comparison. Algorithms. Endless stimulation. And if you don't learn how to reclaim your mind in the first few minutes of the day, someone else will shape your emotional state for you. In this video, we're going to break down 5 silent Stoic phrases that can completely change the way you move through modern life. Not motivational slogans. Not fake positivity. Real mental anchors. Anchors that help you. Stop carrying yesterday into today. Stop being emotionally controlled by noise. Stop living like your nervous system belongs to society. And stay until the end. Because the final principle is the one most people avoid, even though it may be the only thing capable of giving you real peace in a world addicted to distraction. There's a strange thing happening in modern society. People look more connected than ever, but internally, they're collapsing. You see it everywhere. A man standing in line for coffee scrolling through bad news before sunrise. A woman answering work emails in bed before she even says good morning to herself. Parents physically present at dinner while mentally trapped somewhere else. Everyone is reachable. Nobody feels present. And beneath all the productivity, the self-improvement, the endless optimization, there's this quiet exhaustion nobody talks about. Not physical exhaustion. Soul exhaustion. The Stoics would have understood this immediately. Because Stoicism was never about becoming emotionless. It was about refusing to let the outside world dictate your inner state. Marcus Aurelius wrote many of his reflections while leading an empire under pressure most modern people couldn't survive for a week in. Yet over and over again, he returned to the same truth. Your peace is either self-governed, or externally controlled. And that's the real war today. Not politics. Not technology. Not money. Attention. Who controls your attention controls your emotional life. That's why mornings matter so much. Because the first few minutes after waking up are psychologically vulnerable. Your mind hasn't fully armored itself yet. And modern society knows that. That's why the world reaches for you immediately. Headlines. Notifications. Outrage. Urgency. Comparison. Fear. Before you even reconnect with yourself. So today, we're going to slow everything down. 5 principles. 5 phrases. 5 mental resets. Not to make you perfect. But to make you harder to manipulate. And maybe, for the first time in a long time, help you feel like your mind belongs to you again. Part 1, I'm grateful to be here. Most people wake up already dissatisfied. Before their feet touch the floor, their mind starts calculating. What's missing? What's late? What's unfair? What they still haven't achieved. And modern culture quietly encourages this. Because a grateful person is difficult to control. Think about it. Advertising survives by convincing you that your current life is incomplete. Social media survives by making you compare your reality to someone else's performance. The system works best when you feel psychologically lacking. So the moment you wake up, the machine begins feeding your insecurity. You should be richer. More attractive. More successful. More productive. More visible. Never enough. And that's why gratitude is dangerous. Not soft dangerous. Revolutionary dangerous. Because gratitude interrupts the manipulation. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." But most people surrender that power before breakfast. Here's what's interesting though. The older you get, the more you realize life isn't stable at all. One phone call can change everything. One diagnosis. One accident. One betrayal. One funeral. Suddenly the things you ignored become sacred. Breathing normally. Hearing your child laugh. Sunlight through a window. Drinking coffee in silence. Having another ordinary morning. People chase extraordinary lives while failing to notice the miracle of still being alive. And maybe that's why so many people feel empty after achieving things they thought would save them. Because achievement without presence still feels hollow. A few years ago, I remember waking up one morning and realizing I hadn't actually experienced a sunrise in months. I had seen them physically. But mentally, I was somewhere else every single day. Already stressed. Already mentally negotiating with problems that hadn't even happened yet. And that's when I understood something uncomfortable. You can lose your life without dying. You lose it through unconsciousness. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." That line hits differently in modern society. Because most people aren't consciously living anymore. They're reacting. Reaction becomes identity. But gratitude slows reaction. It brings you back into your body. So tomorrow morning, before touching your phone, before checking messages, before entering the emotional marketplace of the internet, pause. Take one breath. And quietly say, "I'm grateful to be here." Not because life is perfect. But because you still have another chance to live it differently. That sentence sounds simple. But repeated daily, it changes the architecture of your mind. Part 2, Yesterday Doesn't Own Me. One of the saddest things about modern adults is how many of them are still emotionally living inside old moments. An argument from 3 years ago. A divorce. A business failure. A humiliation. A version of themselves they can't forgive. Their body moved forward. Their identity didn't. And society secretly reinforces this too. People are constantly reminded of who they were. Old posts. Old mistakes. Old labels. Old expectations. There's almost no room left for reinvention anymore. The internet remembers everything. But Stoicism teaches something radical. Your past explains you. It does not imprison you. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." That sounds inspirational until you actually try living it. Because letting go sounds easy in theory. Until it's your regret. Your shame. Your failure. I think a lot of people secretly replay old moments because they believe suffering keeps them morally connected to what happened. Like if they stop hurting, maybe it means it didn't matter. But pain repeated long enough becomes identity. And identity repeated long enough becomes destiny. That's why some people stay emotionally trapped for decades. Not because they can't heal. Because they unconsciously built a home inside their wounds. I remember meeting a man once who still talked about a betrayal from 20 years earlier as if it happened yesterday. And while he was speaking, I realized something. The betrayal didn't destroy him. The replaying did. The Stoics understood that memory can become self-torture if left unmanaged. That's why every morning matters. Morning is psychological rebirth. A line separating who you were from who you're choosing to become. So when you wake up tomorrow, say this. Yesterday doesn't own me. Not as denial. As liberation. You're allowed to learn without remaining chained. You're allowed to move forward without permission from your past. And honestly, most people don't need more self-hatred. They need emotional release. Because you cannot build a peaceful future while emotionally dragging dead versions of yourself behind you. Part 3, I control my mind. Modern society profits from emotional impulsiveness. Think carefully about that. Every platform grows stronger the more reactive people become. Anger spreads faster than calm. Fear spreads faster than wisdom. Outrage spreads faster than truth. A distracted mind is profitable. A centered mind is difficult to influence. That's why internal control is one of the most rebellious things a person can develop today. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." But modern people are trained to reverse that equation. They spend their lives trying to control public opinion, politics, other people, outcomes, validation. Meanwhile, their own thoughts control them completely. One negative comment ruins their day. One text message changes their mood. One inconvenience destroys their peace. That's not power. That's dependency. Carl Jung said, "Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakens." And honestly, most people are terrified of silence because silence forces confrontation. Without distraction, you finally hear your own mind clearly. That's why some people can't sit still for even 5 minutes anymore. The noise became anesthesia. But the Stoics believed self-mastery begins in observation. Not suppression. Observation. You are not every thought that appears in your head. Thoughts arrive automatically. Wisdom is choosing which ones deserve authority. A few years ago, I noticed something disturbing in myself. I would wake up and immediately absorb the emotional temperature of the internet. Before my day even started, strangers online had already influenced my nervous system. And that's when I realized, if you don't consciously guard your mind, society will rent space inside it for free. So now, every morning, before the world enters, silence first. Breathing first. Awareness first. Because the strongest people I've ever met weren't loud. They were internally stable. And that stability came from repetition. Not motivation. Practice. Aristotle said, "We are what we repeatedly do." Mental peace is repetition too. So tomorrow morning, before the chaos arrives, remind yourself, I control my mind. Not perfectly. Not instantly. But intentionally. And that changes everything. Part 4, Kindness is my superpower. This might be the most misunderstood principle in the entire video. Because modern culture often confuses kindness with weakness. People think power means emotional coldness, detachment, dominance, control. But insecure people often perform hardness because they're terrified of vulnerability. Real strength feels different. Calmer. More grounded. Less desperate to prove itself. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Kindness is invincible when it's sincere." And honestly, that's one of the hardest philosophies to live by in modern society. Because people are tired. Triggered. Suspicious. Everyone's carrying invisible pressure. Financial stress. Loneliness. Comparison. Burnout. So people become emotionally sharp with each other. Short tempers. Passive aggression. Emotional withdrawal. And if you're not careful, you start becoming the same way without realizing it. That's the dangerous part. The world slowly trains you into emotional hardness until compassion starts feeling unnatural. But Stoicism never taught emotional numbness. It taught emotional discipline. And there's a difference. Kindness doesn't mean becoming naive. It doesn't mean allowing disrespect. It means refusing to let bitterness become your personality. Carl Jung said, "Knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darkness of other people." That line changed the way I see people. Because once you understand your own fears, your own shame, your own insecurities, you stop reacting to everyone else with immediate judgment. You begin seeing behavior differently. That rude cashier may be exhausted. That angry coworker may be drowning privately. That emotionally distant person may be surviving something invisible. And no, this doesn't excuse bad behavior. But it protects your peace from unnecessary hatred. A few years ago, I remember sitting in traffic after an exhausting day when a stranger rolled down his window and started screaming at me over something small. Old me would have escalated instantly. But something strange happened. I just looked at him and thought, this man is suffering. Not superiorly. Not spiritually. Humanly. And the anger dissolved almost immediately. Because compassion interrupts ego. That's why kindness is power. Not performative kindness. Not social media kindness. Real kindness. The kind that expects nothing back. The kind that exists because you decided who you want to become regardless of what society rewards. So tomorrow morning, before entering another noisy day, remind yourself. Kindness is my superpower. Because the world already has enough emotionally wounded people trying to wound each other. What it lacks is emotionally disciplined people who remain grounded anyway. Part 5, Everything is temporary. This may be the hardest truth to accept. Everything changes. Your stress. Your success. Your relationships. Your youth. Your pain. Your body. Your life. Modern society avoids this reality constantly. It distracts itself from mortality 24 hours a day. Endless entertainment. Endless scrolling. Endless stimulation. Because silence eventually forces people to confront time. And time terrifies most people. The Stoics faced it directly. Memento mori. Remember you will die. Not as depression. As awakening. Because once you deeply understand that life is temporary, strange things begin happening. Petty arguments lose importance. Ego softens. Presence increases. You stop postponing your life emotionally. Seneca wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." That feels painfully modern. People spend years mentally absent. Waiting for weekends. Waiting for money. Waiting for peace. Waiting for some future version of life to finally begin. Meanwhile, life quietly keeps moving. I think that's why so many adults suddenly wake up at 40 or 50 feeling disoriented. Not because life moved fast. Because they weren't fully inside it while it was happening. A few months ago, I watched an older man sitting alone at a small diner early in the morning. No phone. No headphones. No rushing. Just drinking coffee slowly and watching sunlight move across the window. And for some reason, it stayed with me. Because he looked present in a way modern people rarely do anymore. Not distracted. Not mentally elsewhere. Just there. And maybe that's the final lesson. Peace isn't hidden somewhere in the future. It exists in your ability to fully enter the moment you're already living. So tomorrow morning, before the rush, before the noise, before the world starts demanding pieces of your attention, pause, breathe, and remember, everything is temporary. So I will enjoy this moment. Not because life is easy. Because life is fragile. And fragile things deserve presence. So let's bring everything back together. 5 phrases. 5 mental resets. I'm grateful to be here. Because gratitude breaks the psychological addiction to lack. Yesterday doesn't own me. Because healing requires release, not endless replay. I control my mind. Because attention is the real battlefield of modern life. Kindness is my superpower. Because emotional discipline is stronger than emotional hardness. Everything is temporary. Because presence becomes possible once you stop living as if time is unlimited. The Stoics were never trying to help people escape life. They were trying to help people return to it. Fully. Consciously. Deliberately. And maybe that's what most people are truly starving for now. Not more stimulation. More presence. Not more noise. More clarity. Not another performance. Just one honest moment where they finally feel connected to themselves again. If this video spoke to something you've been feeling lately, let me know in the comments. Which of these 5 phrases hit you the hardest? And what's one thing modern society is doing to people mentally that you think nobody talks about enough? If you found value here, subscribe to Stoic Journal for more videos about Stoicism, mental clarity, emotional discipline, and navigating modern life without losing yourself in the noise. And remember this. The world gets louder every year. Your mind doesn't have to.